We thought we'd found the perfect life. A beautiful home, kind neighbors, quiet streets. But sometimes, the people closest to you are hiding something darker than you could ever imagine. 3 years ago, my partner and I bought our first home. It was modest, simple, safe. Our neighbors were wonderful, and life felt almost too good to be true. 18 months later, when those same neighbors decided to sell their house, larger, more luxurious, we didn't hesitate. We bought it, and we put our old house, right next door, up for sale. After reading several letters from potential buyers, we chose a Polish couple. They seemed pleasant, normal. They asked questions about the house. We made small talk, looking back. That was the calm before the storm. Strange things began happening. At midnight, without warning, violent banging would shake the walls. Deafening music would erupt from next door at the most ungodly hours. It wasn't constant, but it was enough. Enough to make us wonder. Who exactly had we let in? Then came the first red flag. Our neighbor arrived home one day with both sides of his car completely destroyed. Deep scrapes, long gouges, the kind of damage that tells a story you're not supposed to ask about. When we questioned him, he smiled and offered 2 separate explanations. A concrete pole on one side, a trailer on the other. We chose to believe him. The math didn't add up. One evening around 6 o'clock, our neighbor called us in a panic. He claimed strangers were outside, turning his security cameras away. We looked. He was right. 2 men were breaking in. We called the police. 20 minutes later, they arrived. The burglars were already gone. But as I walked outside with my dog, I noticed something strange, while his wife came racing to the scene in a frenzy of fear. Her husband parked 3 streets away and walked slowly toward the chaos, as if he was hiding his car from the police. The thought passed through my mind like smoke, and then it disappeared. Later that night, we reviewed our doorbell footage, and there he was, one of the intruders, standing outside our neighbor's door before the break-in, calmly discussing which house to target. In Polish, nothing was stolen. Nobody was caught. I told the police it felt like a setup. I never heard back. 1 week later, I was at a housewarming party when my partner texted me. "The music next door is insane again." A few minutes later, he called. His voice was different this time. Pure terror. Our neighbor's car had just come tearing through our front garden and slammed into the neighbor's own front door. 2 men were loading the vehicle with high-end electronics, flat-screen TVs, professional speakers, expensive gear, the same men from the week before. Except this time, the police arrived in 7 minutes. The officers intercepted them mid-loading. When asked for identification, the men claimed they had none. Then, things became surreal. The man behind the wheel looked the officer directly in the eye and claimed to be my neighbor, using his exact name. But here's the thing. In 9 months of living next door to us, our neighbor had never spoken a single word of Dutch. This man spoke fluent Dutch with a thick Polish accent. The game was up. The men slammed the car into gear. A violent chase tore through our quiet suburban streets until police boxed them in. 3 suspects were arrested. But inside our house, reporting damage to an officer, the doorbell rang. We turned around, and there he was, our neighbor, unrecognizable. His face was a swollen, bloody ruin. One eye sealed shut, his mouth torn open, his arm hanging at a useless angle, covered in what looked like defensive stab wounds. He looked feral, broken, like something the darkness had chewed up and spat back out. The officer tried to step in, but the neighbor refused to cooperate, refused to file a report, refused to speak, and so the officer had no choice. He sent him back next door. That night, our neighbor rang our bell again. He was trembling, and then he confessed. He had cheated on his wife, and he believed she had sent people to have him killed. He begged to sleep at our house. We said no. My partner drove him to the hospital instead. We dropped him off at 10:30 p.m., told him we were staying elsewhere for the night. We went home, locked every door, and tried to breathe. At 1 o'clock in the morning, our dog began to growl. Not a bark, not a whine. That slow, low growl he only uses when someone is at the door. We checked the camera. There he was, back from the hospital, standing on our porch in the dark, ringing the bell, again and again. We sat in silence, watching, not moving, barely breathing. Then, headlights swept across the street. The neighbor froze. He scrambled off the porch and hid, crouching in the shadows behind our own cars in the driveway, watching that bloodied, broken man lurk in the darkness outside our home. That was one of the most unsettling moments of my life. The car stopped. A woman stepped out. His wife. She walked toward her front door, paused, and glanced toward our driveway. She saw him. We held our breath. She walked toward him slowly, and as she stepped into the pale yellow glow of the street lamp, she began to wail. A haunting, guttural sound that echoed through the empty street like something breaking deep inside her. He never said a word. She kept asking questions through her sobs, louder and louder. And then they got into the car together and drove away into the dark. We didn't see them for 3 days. We didn't even know where their dog was. Eventually, the wife came back, alone. She found the dog inside. She told us she doesn't think she'll ever see her husband again. Whatever the real story was. Drugs, debt, a marriage turned lethal. I've come to realize one thing. Some doors are better left unopened. Some stories are better left untold. And some neighbors you never truly know.